This video is going to talk about your last graded assignment, which is the final exam. I'll be talking about what it is, what I'm expecting, how I'm grading it, and how to submit it. So the major questions students usually ask me, first off, what is it? It's a take-home essay exam. What's going to happen is you're answering two different questions. They're going to be submitted in one document. One is you'll be analyzing a speech from a movie, and you get to pick which movie you want, and the other one is you're going to be analyzing a TED Talk, and you'll get to pick from a list of TED Talks. But basically what this is going to require is that you take the concepts that we've learned in class on things like the rhetorical situation, rhetorical style, Tolman's argument, all these sorts of things that we've been working on through the whole semester, and then you apply them to the speeches that you're watching. Are the speakers effectively using these concepts? If so, how? Why are they effective? Or why are they not effective? So that's what you're going to be looking at. It is going to be due on the 6th or 7th of May, so 6th is for my Monday, Wednesday classes, 7th is for my Tuesday, Thursday classes, and it's going to be submitted through Blackboard on Safe Assign. I'm going to show you how to do that in a second, but one thing I do want to point out is I am using Safe Assign, and every semester I have students that plagiarize. I don't know why students don't understand that if you put it in Safe Assign, it will get discovered that you plagiarize. So please do not plagiarize. I have to fail students every semester. I don't want to do that. Please do not plagiarize. If you have any problem with the final exam, come to me first. I don't want to have to fail you for that, and I don't want to have to deal with plagiarism. And please also start working on it ahead of time rather than like a couple hours before it's due, because that's usually where plagiarism ends up happening. All right, grading and length. So the length is 1,100 to 1,500 words in total. Now remember, I said you're answering two different prompts. I don't have a specific length for each question, but in the end it should probably get to about this. If you're under 1,100, you're not doing the exam right. So if you're just barely making 1,100, once you put your name in the class and you try and mess with the font and all that, you need to go back and work on this again. If you are over 1,500, that's perfectly fine. I wouldn't be too far over 1,500, maybe a couple of hundred words beyond that, but I'm not going to mark you off for being over. But do make sure if you're under, there's no way you're going to be doing well on the exam. Grading, so what I'm looking for, first that you understand the concepts, and I'll talk a little bit more about what concepts you're applying in a second. Your ability to apply the concepts, your strength and development of the analysis, because you are going to be talking about, well, you know, this is how the speaker is using this, or this is what the rhetorical situation is, this is why it's effective, this is why it's not, this is why the speaker is using it. So those sorts of things, that you're actually substantiating the claims, you're giving me examples from the speeches, right? I really can clearly tell that you understand like what logos is, for instance, when you critique that. And then, of course, your writing, so that it is college level writing, you know, grammar, things like that I will be looking at. I'm not going to mark heavily down if you have, you know, extremely poor grammar, but if it does impede in my ability to understand, or the writing's not at a professional level, then that's a problem. If you are concerned about that, feel free to go to the English lab. You can also, if you start working on the exam ahead of time, send it to me. I have no problem at looking at it. You know, if you haven't finished all of it, or you have some notes and you just want to say like, hey, am I on the right track? I have no problem with looking at it and making sure that you're doing well on the exam. All right, submitting the exam, so this is what I'm going to talk about next, as well as just breaking down what the actual exam is going to be like. All right, submission, like I said, this is going to be in two different parts, but what you're going to do is be submitting this as an essay, and it said it earlier in the PowerPoint, but I didn't stress it. This will be an essay, an actual essay. Sometimes people have submitted like bullet points, or they've submitted something like an outline. It's not. This is an essay. This should be submitted as one document, and it needs to be a Word document. So typically students will answer the two questions separately, so they'll answer question 1, then they'll skip to another page, answer question 2, but it's one document, and it should be a Word file that's actually submitted. Okay, The essay's actual format, I'm just going to go over what I'm looking for. For some of you, this may be basic, especially if you've taken ENC 1101 and 1102. This is not to insult anyone. I just want to be very clear as to what I want, and particularly for those students who have less writing experience, I want to be clear on how you actually set up an essay. So, for the introduction, here's what you need to do. Identify first the speech that you're using. So if you're doing the movie speech, that first part, identify which movie it's from. If you're doing the TED Talk part, then you would identify what TED Talk. Give a very brief summary of the context, audience, and purpose of the speaker. So kind of basically what's the rhetorical situation, kind of hit on that, right? Why are they talking? What's the purpose? What's going on? What's the situation? So anything that would be relevant. This is not the point at which you should be adding a lot of words so that you can hit the 1100. So don't spend a lot of time on this. A very brief summary is all you need. And then, of course, preview the concepts that you're analyzing and then your overall take on the effectiveness of the speech. You can say the speech is ineffective, by the way. It's totally up to you, but I just need you to hit on these things. You know, I'm going to be talking about this speech. Essentially, the speaker was talking about this, and this is what's going on. I'm going to be using these concepts, and, you know, I thought that these concepts really helped to make the speech very effective or ineffective. That's basically what you're going to be doing. Okay, the body of the speech. So, a couple of things you want to keep in mind. Obviously, the concepts that you're being applied. So you're going to have to pick some concepts, and I'll talk more specifically about what specifically you will be using depending on which question it is. But you do need to tell me the concepts, and then you also need to define the concept. This is going to be where you are showing me your knowledge. Now, please make sure that you're not like copying and pasting what I said from another video. I would like to hear what is your version of the concept. What do you think it actually is? The other thing, give a specific but brief example of how the concept is being utilized. So sometimes I'll have students who will say, you know, oh, he was using ethos and it really worked. Well, how? Prove that to me. What did the person say? What did the person do? How is this actually ethos? You can use quotes. That's perfectly fine, but if you're going to start putting in major block quotes to fill up space, that's not going to work. So really just tell me what's going on, a quote if necessary, or just briefly summarize. Next thing, discuss the effectiveness of the concept. So did it work? Did it not work? And why, right? So that's also kind of what we've been doing throughout this entire course, is really utilizing these concepts that speakers use and making sure that we're doing them well. And then how the concept connects to the speaker's goal or concept or context of the speech, excuse me. You know, so if the person is using, say, ethos, and they're trying to, you know, make sure that they seem like a speaker who's really kind and caring, and maybe they're doing a speech that's on, say, education, and really coming across as someone who's kind and caring if they're speaking to students is important to that, right? Because they want the students to see them in that way, and that's their goal as a speaker. And then, of course, the other thing, make sure you highlight the concept in bold just so I can clearly identify that that is the concept that you're using. So here I have an example. The speaker effectively used anaphora. Highlight anaphora, you know, bold it, put it in a color, whatever it is. But this is what I want you to do in the body of the essay. And, of course, the conclusion. Summarize the argument, review your thesis, conclude the section of the paper, and you want to do this for each separate question that you have. So that is what I'm looking for as far as the actual format of the essay. All right, now on to the actual questions themselves. I've only briefly touched on them, so I really want to give you specifics on what it is that you need to answer. So the first part, like I said, you're going to be critiquing a movie speech. So I'm going to give you a couple of clips. I'll show you what those are in a second. And you need to discuss how the speaker is using all three of the rhetorical proofs: ethos, pathos, and logos. So what you need to do in the actual answer itself is, of course, like I said, define the concept. So what are each of the rhetorical proofs? Give example of how the speaker is using them, preferably more than one, because in some of these clips they're used multiple times. And let me also say, in all the clips they are all used. So if you're looking at a clip and you're saying, I can't find, say, logos, use another clip or come talk to me and we can figure out, you know, what you're missing here, but all of them have them. And then analyze its effects on the audience or the purpose of the rhetorical proof being used. So let me give you an example of what that looks like. So first off, these are some of the clips. There's 3 different movies. Elizabeth, Weir, Marshall, Gladiator, Thank You for Not Smoking. These links, by the way, are all on the exam, so it's not like you have to get into this video and like somehow try and copy and paste this, which you actually couldn't do anyways, but whatever. It's all on the exam, which I'm going to show you in a second. Now, an example. So this is kind of what I want you to replicate, right? So the speaker, you discussed his upbringing, mentioning that he grew up poor and was raised by just his mother. This is an example of ethos, so I'm defining the concept. I've brought up an example, which is the speaker's character or credibility, so defined it. By discussing his modest background, the speaker creates himself to be an everyman. He is someone who can relate to the crowd and had to work to get to his current position. This is effective, right? So then analyze the effectiveness because he shows the crowd that he's relatable and he understands their concerns. So this is just a small portion. Remember, you would want to do all 3 of the rhetorical proofs. So you get to pick which movie of the 4 that I've listed, and then you need to analyze the rhetorical proofs there, defining the concept, saying how the speaker used it, and analyzing it. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, part 2. So this is the second question. You are going to do a rhetorical analysis of a TED Talk. So first, you have to pick a TED Talk. These are the TED Talks. Again, these links are actually going to be in the exam themselves, but these are ones that you will be able to pick from, and they're all really, really good ones. Now, once you've actually picked it, what do you have to do? What you're going to be doing is analyzing the success or failure of the speech in persuading the audience, and you will have to use 4 of the following course concepts in order to do this. So, here's the one thing. And I want to make this clear. You have to use 2 from each of the category. And again, this chart is also on the final exam. So I could, for instance, pick, Tolman's model of argument. Tolman's model of argument and let's say engaging the audience in this category. And then I could pick non-factual sources and arrangement in the second category. Sorry that I keep doing that. So you can't pick 4 from here or 4 from here. It has to be 2 from here, 2 from here. Now, if you want to pick more than 4, by all means, but it has to be at least 4, 2 from each category. I didn't want people picking out just the easy things like engaging the audience, non-factual sources, those sorts of things. The other thing, too, you'll notice there are no rhetorical proofs in here. So you did this in the first question. You will not be addressing rhetorical proofs. Just to kind of briefly review some of these concepts. So remember Tolman's model of argument that you're probably pretty familiar with by now since we're doing the argumentation speeches. But obviously claim is your argument, data, I have them out of order here, is your evidence, and warrant is connecting them. The persuasive route, central or peripheral, that of course is when you have an audience that's either for or against the speech. If they are in the central route, that means they're against your topic, and you'll mainly be using logos and a little bit of ethos, like we saw in the newsroom speech. In the peripheral route, the audience is mostly for it. You'll use a lot of pathos, like we saw in the volunteering for the Special Olympics speech. Engaging, involving the audience, these are things like doing activities, pulling the audience, asking a question, those sorts of things. Rhetorical style, so anaphora, epistrophe, antithesis, alliteration. I have a whole video, so I'm not going to really go over that. Rhetorical canon on style, so remember the oral or clear style. So clear obviously is clarity, lack of jargon. Oral is that you seem very conversational, using personal pronouns, things like that. Rhetorical situation, triangle, you should be familiar with this one, but again, that's probably from the very first video that I did. Arrangement are the structures that we've talked about: Monroe's, problem, cause, solution, statement of reasons. Non-factual sources, use of narratives, visuals, testimony, and examples. And if you have any questions on any of these concepts, you can go back to my videos, and of course you feel free to talk to me. Now, directions for this, I've kind of already said this, but just to basically go over it again, make sure when you're naming the concepts that you picked, you explain what the concept means, then apply it to the speech, and also analyze its effectiveness. Now remember, you can say the speaker's ineffective. There's nothing wrong with that.
Also note that just saying, you know, if you discuss, say, delivery, right? He did well, not appropriate. You have to be specific. You have to give me an example. You have to connect this back to the speech. So I'm really looking for a much higher order level of analysis here. Again, if you are ever confused or feel like maybe you're not doing this right, please send this to me or talk to me so that we can go over it together. I have no problem giving you feedback, but you do have to start on this in advance so that I'll be able to actually give you feedback in good time so that you'll be able to submit it. Okay, so this is Blackboard. This is what it should now look like. You'll notice here Safe Assignments and Safe Assignment Tutorial has popped up. Before, all that was really here is My Grades. And just FYI, on My Grades, make sure if you haven't already done so, please look and see where you are participation-wise. I'm going to be updating those grades relatively soon, so just keep that in mind. Okay, Safe Assignment. So you'll click on that. And what will happen is the copy of the exam that you saw is here. So everything I put in that PowerPoint is just copied and pasted from that. So those links I mentioned are here, the TED Talks, that chart is here, all of that's here. So what you're going to do is scroll down, you'll hit View Complete. And then what you'll do, so some people will copy and paste everything into this little box right here. You can do that as a backup. Or actually, no, because I don't think that'll go through Safe Assignment. So ignore what I just said. What you do have to do is go to Browse, and then you will pick your actual document once you've finished it and saved it. So I'll just click on this as an example. And it should attach in a second. There we go. And you'll hit Submit. And then it should submit. Okay, submitted successfully. So as long as you get that little green tab up here, you're done, you're good. That's literally all it takes to submit the exam. So it does have to be submitted on Safe Assign. For those who are not familiar with Safe Back, if you would like to get it.